Good evening and welcome to another edition of the Magpie Circle. If I could have found a tin hat, one of my dad's old World War II hats, I would have put it on tonight. I think it's going to be a bit lively. Not a dull moment in the Magpies household, is there? Welcome tonight, Leigh Curtis. Leigh, welcome.
Good evening. How are we?
Yeah, good to have you back. And we've also got long-suffering, aren't we all, Notts County supporter Martin Kelk. And Martin has been one of the largest individual corporate backers of the club in recent times. His company's name have been on our shirts. He's done some charity initiatives with the club. So thank you for all your financial support as well as emotional support for the club. Martin.
Good evening, Paul.
Yes, good evening. Good evening. Good evening. Okay, key topics. We're going to try and wrap this up in 45 minutes for those of us watching live, because we want to go and see England versus Poland at 7:45. Those of you who haven't subscribed yet, bit of housekeeping. There is at one of the bottom corners a little red subscribe button. Please click that. Gives you a better subscriber and experience watching us. It's all absolutely free. Don't worry about that. We're looking ahead to Wrexham at the start of a busy Easter weekend for the club. Inevitably, we have to look back to last night and Aldershot. The big question I want to discuss tonight is, can Notts still make the playoffs? Do we have a better chance with our new management team, or did we have a better chance with our previous management team? And we'll also be taking a look at the recently published today, I was going to call them agents, but I think you have to be proper, and we call them intermediaries, I think is what the FA calls it. We are top of at least one table in the National League, 58k. We were top of that last year as well, and it's come down a bit. So at least it's coming down, but we are the largest spenders. And Leigh and Martin and the rest of you, please get those comments and observations coming in. We can debate whether we feel we've got value for money. Okay. Leigh, you were at the game last night. Thoughts? You've had 24 hours on it. What was it like?
Oh, do I have to relive this again? Well, where to start? Well, I didn't. Oh, it just showed. Well, it just summed it up, didn't it? First shot on target after 86 minutes. I mean, that. What more is there to say? It was just pretty toothless, wasn't it? I felt for the second half, Notts actually dominated the ball for large spells, but there was just a complete mental block in the final third. Ran out of ideas. I mean, Ian went for broke at the end, chucked on Effiong. Knowles did as best as he could to try and get a result, but I think the main problems for me is that just the general lack of movement. I mean, poor old Jim O'Brien last night was perhaps the only person who was trying to make any attempt to run off the ball, and he made several good runs and actually got some joy in the first half, but even then they couldn't turn that into shots on target, and he never really felt that a goal was coming. I think Notts could have played for another 4 hours last night. I would never have scored. So there's some real issues there to sort out. It was just a on the ball, it was okay. Just in the final third, it's just, as has been for large parts of the season, it's just been a total farce in some games.
Let's just get some early comments, because I know they come in thick and fast once I start reading them out. Neil Holmes, a really poor performance last evening. Whilst it was a blatant dive for the goal and the ref had a mare, we offered nothing. Ian needs to go to Specsavers if he thought Reeves had a good game. Neil Holmes, who was not the only one, of course, was depressing viewing yet again from early on. The writing was on the wall, never looked like getting out of first gear. Expected some sort of reaction, got note. Richard Hawksworth, playing like we did yesterday gives little optimism for Friday. We know what Notts is like. A couple more poor results now, which are potentially very likely, and the pressure on the manager owners will ramp up. Dale Pikett, this team is so devoid of confidence. It's worrying. They're also devoid of ideas in games. So it's not like it's like a new team, as most of the players are from last season. James Spring from down south. Last night smacked of a team that's down tools. Would we still have sacked Ardley if 5K were in the lane singing his name every week? I wonder. Can't help but feel like we've shot ourselves in the But Ian Baggett, the team are lacking confidence and need to be more attacking. Knight and Roberts need to start ASAP. This is kind of like a game. As fast as I read them out, more come in. Joe Johnson. I think Notts have only played well in a handful of games all season, down to recruitment. Rose, Dennis, Thomas, Crawford and Osborne, all better than the players we signed. James Spring, by the way, Paul, was Ryan Reynolds not available for the Wrexham preview pod? Well, we did get Robbie Savage last time, and he would argue he's more of an A-lister than Ryan Reynolds. We did try to get Notts' own version of Hollywood. I did ask for Vicky McClure, but she's been doing lots of other promotional work for In Line of Duty, so hopefully we'll get her for the return leg against Wrexham. We've got to play them twice, remember. Matt Ben Knotts, was it only last night? Seems days ago now. Got to stick with it. What else can we do? Dale Pikett, do you think Notts need a sports shrink to help them with their confidence? Right, cool. That was quite a few. Martin, give us a fan's view. What do you reckon?
It's not the first game this season and last season that we've gone to the 80th odd minute before we've had the first shot on target. This is not anything that's new. But to be fair, I didn't think they were ever going to score. If you take the penalty away, I never thought they were going to score either, as well as us.
Look, give us the fans. You are a long-suffering Notts fan. We've had a group of players that have been in the playoffs virtually all of this season. Most people would say we'll make the playoffs. In the last two games, people are now saying this squad needs stripping apart, dismantling. Does it really change that quickly?
We're not going to dismantle and strip this squad down until there'll be changes in the summer. But I've said it from day one. Who is going to score the goals? We've got a defence. We've got the players for a defence. And I think most fans will agree that we've got, enough players for a good defence. We've got a very good goalkeeper. But we just do not have that extra quality in the last third of the pitch. Look who scored all the goals. Has anybody scored over 5 in the league bar Wootton? We should be having, at the end of the season, you should be having at least one centre-back scored 5 goals. A right and left back should have scored a couple. And we should have a centre midfielder score somewhere around 8. And we should have 2/3 centre forwards all going between 10 and 20 goals. We've only got one player that's doing that out of that lot.
Leigh, are we going to make the playoffs?
Well, it's still very much in Notts' hands. I mean, it's hard not to sort of get swayed by the anger and the emotion that was on social media last night. And I can understand the fans' concern. But they've still got a couple of games in hand. The new boys come in today, Regan Griffiths. So it's still very much there. I totally concur with what Martin says about the front players. I mean, I said this back in the summer. It was one of the first things I said. They've got to replace the goals that they lost in the team, and they simply haven't done it. And another thing as well, poor old Kyle Wootton. I feel so sorry for him. That bloke deserves a medal because the amount of times the ball is pumped into him, and if he loses a header, nobody is ever around him. So it makes his hold-up play look bad. You look at the game last night, how many times, on the occasions he lost a header, who was quick enough to get the second ball? Nobody. There's nobody on their toes. And that's a big problem because you're turning possession over. So, Notts haven't got another option to go alongside Kyle. So there's nobody else they can hit. So if Kyle doesn't have a very good game or is well marshalled by the two centre-halves like Aldershot's last night, you have to try and go for a different route of attack. And unfortunately, if Enzio has a bad game, and he wasn't the best last night, that's another main threat that you've got. Outside of that, there's no real threat in the team. There's no threat. There's no pace. There's no, who I would say, 1v1 domination, who can get past players. Calvin Miller's come in. He's sort of been up and down. He shows flashes one week, then he's nowhere near it the next. And that's been a real problem. The recruitment this year, as somebody has just said on the comments here, I don't think the squad this year is as good as last year. The recruitment this year has been poor in terms of the final third. Took a massive gamble not replacing Dennis, and should have replaced Wes Thomas as soon as he walked out the door. You know, we have to remember as well, there's no transfer window stopping Notts from doing that, so they could have done it, but they haven't, and they're paying the price for it. And if anything that will cost in the playoffs, it will be the lack of goals. Okay,
we don't duck anything on this show. We ask for people to be courteous, respectful, and not heaping abuse. So Richard Hawksworth is asking, I think it's a very fair question. Martin, your thoughts? So Richard Hawksworth, the owners are clearly driving the style of football. Honeymoon over, will never work in this league. Has anyone got the nerve to discuss this? We'll come to Leigh in a minute. What are your thoughts on that, Martin?
Are the owners driving the style of football we played? Very similar to what we tried to play in the season we got relegated. The owners weren't here then. As the owners of the football club, they have a right to say how they want the club running from top to bottom. You know, these owners are probably putting in, what, £2 to £3 million each year? What do you think? Serious amount of money. Now, I personally, before Notts ever got relegated, I'd never seen a National League game. I don't know about you. Can teams get out with playing the way we play? I don't know. But the only problem with the way we play is I think we're just a little bit too slow in getting the ball forward. Last season, we got to the playoff final, didn't we? You'd say if we'd have won that game, everything else would look totally different. For 90 minutes, it just fell apart. Totally. We played Harrogate last season and beat them 2-0 away from home. I remember going to the game. Apart from a penalty, and they had one other chance. I didn't think they were ever going to score against us. But we had a different kind of team that night, just because of the way we had suspensions and stuff. But as owners, they've got a right to say, look, we want to run the club this way. Who knows if it's going to work? Nobody knows. Everybody says if we'd have kept Neil, we'd have got promoted. We won't know that. We're only guessing.
Leigh?
Style of play. Well, it's amazing, isn't it, how things quickly get airbrushed out of history. If you remember last year, Notts were undoubtedly, possibly, the most entertaining team to watch in the National League, probably aside from Barrow, who I thought were really good to watch. Some of the performances when they were on that run before the season got interrupted by COVID were magnificent. The performance against Eastleigh at home, 4-0, astonishingly good for that level. And this year they've done all right. There was the game against Aldershot where I thought they played really well against Barnet. But they've missed again. But last year they had Callum Roberts fit. They had Mitch Rose as the athletic, combative midfield player. Enzio was on the left playing much every week. The team didn't change. There was a lot of consistency within the selection. The only change really which came towards the back end of the season is when Christian Dennis started to play alongside Carl Wootton from the start, because it was actually the reverse of that, wasn't it? If you remember, it was always Thomas and Wootton. And Thomas and Wootton actually had a really good partnership. And then obviously Christian started banging in the goals towards last season. But it didn't feel as a matter whoever played in that team, you always knew that you were going to get a performance. You know, when Roberts was playing, when Dennis was, if it was Dennis alongside Wootton, if it was Wootton alongside Thomas, you felt there were goals in the team. You know, Christian, I remember coming off the bench, I can't remember which game it was, scored that worldy lob from about 25. Was it Aldershot? Scored that worldy lob, you know, and that's what we're missing. We are missing that little bit of extra up front, somebody who can take the burden off Kyle. And I tend to agree. I think it's just not been good enough up front this year. But the style of play, really, I don't think the philosophy has changed that much to what we saw last year. I just think the major difference is the players haven't been as good who they've brought in to replace those that have left. I mean, that's brutal. Any manager will tell you recruitment is 9/10 of the law. You get that, you get it right, you're going to be there or thereabouts.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Recruitment. So I think we would all probably agree recruitment is 9/10 of a successful football team. Now, I think there's a fair amount of debate with the owners introducing, for want of a better phrase, or looking for a statistical and data-based approach, Moneyball, for want of a better phrase. I think it's probably no secret that there were some issues and disagreements between the owners and the Football Radar data and Neil. And someone's on here has asked, I can't quite see it at the minute, about who signed who. Some were Neil signing, some were, if you like, more statistical data led. I'm pretty sure that Ruben Rodriguez, Elijah Sam, and Casper Sloth would not have been on Neil's radar without being presented with statistical analysis relating to those players. It would appear that recruitment model has moved a little bit with the appointment of Ian. His recruitment as head coach, and from what we can pick up in the press briefings and press conferences, the business model now of recruiting players is going to be slightly different than where the manager, the more traditional manager-led approach, both have successes, both have drawbacks. Is this model going to work, Martin, in the National League with Ian Burchnall?
Nobody knows. It's a guess, isn't it? But do I think it can work long term? Yeah, I think it can do long term. No disrespect, but we're all of a certain age. Myself and you, Paul. I don't know, Leigh, how old you are. So this is kind of new to us. We've been used to having the manager turn up. He's either had experience in the National League and a few other clubs before that, like your Neil Warnocks, or we've picked your Sam Allardyce's up. So we're used to having someone within reason that some of us have heard of. There isn't one person, I would imagine, bar from the owners, that knew anything about Ian before he came. Will it work? I think long term, yes, it could possibly work, yeah. But it's going to need time. And Neil Ardley had 2.5 years. So, to be fair to the guy, you've got to give him 2.5 years to pull together everything he wants, I would imagine. He's not going to do it in the summer, is he? Because it's like Ian's come in, because if we'd have made the playoff final under Neil and lost, it would have been about June the 20th when that game would have finished. Pre-season's the first week in July. 6 weeks ready for the new season. So the owners would have been in the same situation they were 2 summers ago, buying the club with a week to go before, we've got no players. I think that's the reason Neil's gone. And they've gone down this line. Will it work? I think so. I think it could possibly work. The only thing I don't know about the club, and I've never asked the question or even looked into it, who advises the brothers? Do they have a director of football? I've never heard of one. Because under a previous owner, I did hear that he said one regret he made was not employing a director of football. They should have dealt with the manager and signings, and they shouldn't have got involved, which I think would be a good thing to happen if there isn't anybody advising the brothers. And that you've got most people that buy football clubs don't really have much experience of football, do they? So where do the brothers get their knowledge from about the game and about players? Apart from statistics, I don't know.
I think that Richard Montague, previously with football, well, still with Football Radio, and bases himself at the club, has quite an influential role. I would certainly agree with you, Martin, that Alexander and Christoph, they put the money up, they bought the club. It's up to them how they operate the club. You have a business, I have a business, and recruitment is key in any form of business. I am a little nervous in terms of the whole timing of this and the potentially jeopardizing the short-term opportunity for us to get promoted. I don't think the previous model under Neil was massively off. You can debate, I think, that Neil fulfilled 70 to 80% of all the requirements. As you yourself said, he got to a playoff final. We have lost, and if we're going to look at statistics, we've lost 7 games this season in the league. We lost 7. It's not a lot. And we've
lose last year.
Yeah, we've already lost 2 in the last 7 days. What I'm trying to do is divorce, because people are pro Neil, people are against Neil. But if we're looking analytically at where the club is, we are in the playoffs. We are in the playoffs, and we have seldom been out of the playoffs. Yes, we all look at Sutton. We should be where Sutton were. Yes, we all look at Torquay, who were for the start of the season. Okay, but there's an 80% solution been supplied by Neil. And ultimately, we judge Neil on winning promotion, nothing else. I'm a little nervous all of a sudden that we now seem to have a narrative that's being potentially presented within on a 4-year plan. And it kind of, if it costs us promotion this season, that's fine, because for the longer term benefit of the club. I've been in football a long time. I've run a Premier League football club at Leicester City. I was an executive director there. When you're Notts County in the National League, in the same way as when you are Sunderland in League One, there is no 4-year plan for Sunderland in League One. There is no 4-year plan for Notts County in the National League, if it includes up to 4 years getting promoted. You, me, all those people on the COP, 2.5 years, we're still in the National League. Do you think we'll all be buying into that long-term plan? My personal view is I don't think we will. And the challenge now is I don't think we have to give everything we possibly can to get promoted this year. Because in my humble opinion, we've got a far better chance of getting promoted this season than we have next. Because this season, we're already in the playoffs. It's 16 games to go. It's going to be 46 games of sheer hard work next season. This year, it's 16. This year, it's 16. Leigh, thoughts?
What about the Moneyball approach?
In terms of the short-term ambition balanced against the longer-term planning for the club.
Well, I mean, they've done the hard part, haven't they? Like you just said, they've done the hard part. They've got up to that position of 6th in the table. Could have gone 4th last night. I mean, victory last night would have done everybody the power of good, I think. It's there. It's in the grasp. Why not go for it? What would be the point of making a change now if you wasn't going to go and challenge for promotion? It would make no sense. This is why the fans are a little bit confused, because they're like, well, okay, you could understand making a change if Notts were 12 points off the playoffs and the objective was promotion. You could understand it. 6th in the table, and this is what that's confusing a lot of the fan base is can't understand why we've made the change when with 6th in the table with 16 games to go. What benefit are you going to get from it? That's what you've got to ask yourself. What benefit do Notts get from changing their manager, being 6th in the table? What's going to happen that's going to make any difference? Are they going to go? Was it the change thinking, right, okay, new manager bounce, they're going to go on this amazing, incredible, unbeaten run until the end of the season. So, you know, but it would be foolish, I think, to sort of accept, you know, let's not try for the rest of the season. If we fall out of the playoffs, that's all right, because I'm telling you now, next season will be even tougher, because if you look at the sides that go down, if Stockport don't go up, they'll have a right go, as they're already having a right go now. Wrexham, funded by serious finances, they'll have a right go. Grimsby will come down, parachute payments. Whoever comes down could be Southend, could even be Colchester. It will be a much tougher league. And that's even if Hartley, you know, who's to say if Hartlepool don't go up either? It will almost be like League Two. And we know how hard it is to get out of League Two. And that's 3 promotion spots, let alone 1. So I agree. I think the best chance you've got of getting out of the league is this year. But there's a lot of things they've got to get right. You know, I think the recruitment, I know they've brought in Regan Griffiths today, but he's a 20-year-old. You know, you're vying for something that's applying a huge amount of pressure on the players. Every game you go into is a huge amount of pressure to get a result. Now, they've signed Regan, by all accounts, a very good footballer. But what the stats don't tell you is character. How's he going to handle it? Is he going to fit straight in? You know, can he handle that, the expectation to perform? Because he will get instantly judged. If he comes in, I'm telling you now, comes against Wrexham, the fans will be judging straight away, because that's how football culture is now. You don't get 3 or 4 weeks to show you're a good player. You get 1 game, 2 games at best, and that's my issue with it. I think I've always said I don't think you will get out of this league by playing kids every week. You just won't. History tells you that. You know, if you look back at the teams who have gone up, no team has ever gone up with just by playing inexperienced players. You know, and that's my biggest concern. Okay,
let's get some of the comments coming in here. Well, a little bit of levity, because it's bloody heavy and deep tonight so far. My old mucker, Trevor West, any former Greenwood Dale, I was going to say Greenwood Dale Comprehensive, it's called something different. They renamed it after I left, I tell you, they needed to. Mason, my old mate, the Adidas bag you always have conspicuously visible just behind you is the most shameless display of product placement I've ever seen. I hope they're paying you well. Incorrect, Trevor. This bag, the reason it's here is because this is the late 70s, early 80s. And this was the actual medical bag as used by Jack Wheeler. Dig out the old videos of when Notts were in the top flight. Jack Wheeler would run on with that bag. And so that's just like from my best days watching Notts County. That's my little nod, the 79 to 82 team, when we were competing and beating the likes of Manchester United, Forest every week, Liverpool, Villa, you name it. So not product placement, Trevor. Some more thoughts. Okay. Ian Baggett, with a more attacking midfield and Robertson Knight, we'd be much more dangerous. Paul Hawksworth, this year's side is way inferior to last year's. Mitch Rose now looks a quality player. Mr. Neil says, maybe Notts County shouldn't have treated Osborne and Pierce Bird so badly regarding contract negotiations. Kelvin Hallam, I don't believe, Ian said it was set up for the Championship and firmly believe that with the right backroom staff. But right now we're in the National League. Adam Wright, is an interesting one. Part of the problem this season has to lie with the pressure we've put ourselves under to gain promotion this season. Good teams out there that achieve success don't even mention the P word. I wonder how many Notts fans, Adam, aren't putting the pressure on the club for promotion. I wonder how season ticket sales will go if we came out and said, you know, we've got a 4-year plan, and at the end of the 4th year we want to get into the Football League. Not sure season ticket sales will be doing too well. SB, this season reminds me so much of the year we lost to Bradford at Wembley. We haven't played really well all season. Ian Baggett, the recruitment has been good apart from not replacing Dennis. Hang on, a few more. Kelvin Hallam, we do not get any benefit from these last 2 games have proven that it feels and looks as if there is a squad that's half and half on knowing what they're doing, and also the arguments we saw on the pitch. Kelsdyke, if we don't go up this season, there will be even more pressure on the new manager from the supporters. Steve Campher, if we don't go up this season, we will spend years in this league. Kelvin Hallam. Ian has already changed the way he plays and has the squad set up. SB, for those who say Knight should start, they should remember what Ardy said about giving the guy a chance to be the best he can be. He hasn't been in full-time adult football before. Give him time. James Spring, Notts need to somehow lose this expectation that we should win every game 5-0 because of our name. A good manager adapts his style to suit the limitations of his players. NA did this. Martin, gazing into your crystal ball, do you fear we may struggle over Easter and for the next few games, or would you consider Aldershot and Hornchurch to be kind of the bottom of the slump, and you would expect us to come back up?
I think we'll stay in the playoffs till the end of the season.
Okay.
I think we'll make the playoffs.
Good.
And when you hit the playoffs, anything can happen. You only need to win the last 2 games before the playoffs, and all of a sudden you're on a bit of a roll, and things can change. Players that miss a chance then suddenly score. I think the part of the problem last season was when we played Barnet in the playoffs, they lost a few players before the game, didn't they? They had players that left, and we kind of strolled through that game. We looked totally comfortable all the way through the game, so it really wasn't a good game for us because we weren't really challenged, I didn't think, all the way through the game. So then all of a sudden you come to a playoff final against a team that, you know, had a difficult game. I think they played Boreham Wood, didn't they? And just got through 1-0. So anything can happen. You just, with the playoffs, you need a bit of luck. So you've always got a chance. Do I think we'll get up by the playoffs? No.
Okay, Leigh, you have more interaction with Ian than most of us. How do you think he's coping? Do you think these 2 results have really come as a massive surprise to him? I mean, what's your take on? I mean, we all talk about pressure, and Ian will kind of say, "Oh, you know, I'm used to this, blah 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 blah." I would be very surprised if these 2 defeats haven't really hurt him.
I feel great sympathy for him in terms of the situation he's been plunged into, because if you're ever going to take over a football club, you want to take over them when they're 16th, bottom of the table, because you know you can then there's tangible signs of progress. When you're in 6th in the table, you've got to come in and hit the ground running. But this isn't through his own making, so I have a lot of sympathy in that respect. And plus, obviously, the hectic schedule as well. So I think it's going to be very difficult for him in terms of trying to do things on the training pitch that are suddenly going to fix a lot of problems. I think if Notts are going to make the playoffs, a lot of things are going to have to fall into place very, very quickly. So Callum Roberts has got to get back fit. Lewis Knight's got to get fit and be challenging alongside, just so Notts have just got something a little bit different up front. Regan Griffiths needs to come in and show why Notts have turned to a 20-year-old who's played 4 first-team games for Crewe this season. They've got to show, you know, he's got to show why, you know, they've brought him to the club. What's he going to do that's different? Is he going to help try sort of improve the passing through the lines? Is he going to be able to give that little bit more movement in midfield that Notts need? So a lot of things need to fall into place very quickly, I think, if Notts are going to go up via the playoffs. Whether they will or not, I'm not so sure, because you've still got the issue of the centre forwards and the lack of goals. So I think it's going to be a tremendously tough task. But if, and it is a big if all those things fall into place, Callum Roberts comes back in and plays the final 15 games of the season, then with him in the side, you never know what's going to happen, because he is a match winner. He's the best player in the National League, in my opinion. I think Adam Virgo in the non-league paper at the weekend said the same. You know, he is the best player in the National League. You know, and him being on the pitch, if he can take 2 or 3 defenders occupied, you know, that does leave space for others. But listen, last night was tough to watch. Martin asked me how old I was. I was 41, but it feels like 81 watching Notts. But yeah, I think a lot of things have got to fall into place. But they're still in a good position. They've just got to sort of rally round. I think they've got to get Doyle back quickly as well. I think Ian said last night that Michael Doyle's such a big player for them in terms of the way he passes through the lines, the way he dictates games. And listen, he is still the best passer at that football club by a country mile.
Kelvin Hallam, I hope Ian and the players prove us all wrong after the last 2 games. We do need the rub of the green as well, to be honest. Hopefully last few weeks will have fired up the players more. Dale Pike, only 12 more days before Leigh can have a haircut. We're all looking forward to that.
Surely it's 13. He'll go to the club on the 12th.
I might just keep it. I'll keep it until Notts get promoted.
Tell you what, though. Talking of dodgy haircuts, did you see Stells last night? Crikey, he's got the old clippers out there, hasn't he?
Buzzcut. Captain Buzzcut, wasn't he? Yeah.
Martin, right time to have made the change for you?
We have there's a group of Notts fans, all, shall we say, 50 plus, suffered 50 years of football. And there's 3 of us that generally talk all the way through the games. And we were all split, really. I thought he would get till the end of the season, but it wasn't until after the Boreham Wood game that I sat down and thought about it and thought, well, if we change a manager, we can't really wait till the summer. Because if we get to the playoff final and lose, all of a sudden you're then saying, well, we've got to stay as we are because we haven't got any more time to plan for the new season. I was surprised. I thought he would get to the end of the season. But then I wasn't surprised when he did go, because I don't know about you. I listened to after the game and I actually thought, that's the first time I'd actually seen him that angry, and he was very angry after his last game, and which quite shocked me, really, because Neil was a lovely bloke. He was always very calm and after the games generally, but after the Yeovil game, he was very, very angry. It was almost as though I thought he'd actually knew he was going. I don't know how true that is. So in one way I was surprised, and in one way I wasn't. And between the group of us, we were all split. But we all thought that he would get to the end of the season. I'm surprised he hasn't now. And long term, I think it is better to have made the change now than to have made it in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, my job is to facilitate these podcasts, canvas opinion, showcase opinion. For what it's worth, I was surprised, although really nothing should surprise us in football. My concern is that having made the decision when they have, I do feel it's potentially jeopardised our chances of getting up this season. And also, I think it's put a huge amount of pressure on Ian and his coaching team. We had Ricardo Moniz on this show, and he talked brilliantly. He talked brilliantly about his philosophy, his passion, and all the rest of it. And he was brought in, albeit to a struggling team under Sean Derry, with a small number of games to go, with the clear remit: you're going to keep us up. He didn't, blew it on the last day. And I said to Ricardo in these conversations, I said, really, that killed you as manager of Notts County? Because 4 months into the following season, he got the boot. And he got the boot as much because he hadn't kept the club up the previous season. If Sean hadn't kept the club up, he maintains he would have done. But if Sean hadn't, you'd brought the new manager in, Ricardo wouldn't have been sacked after 4 months. And I think that if we don't make the playoffs, or we don't go up, people will, to an extent, blame Ian. And that puts a huge amount of pressure on him in inverted commas, the new system that the club wants to play and the new approach next season. And I'm sorry if I keep going over old ground. You can have all the long-term plans you want in football. When there's 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 people chanting your name and telling you to F off, abusing your partner, having a go at your kids, okay? Them 4-year plans go out the window. I've never known one yet that hasn't. That is my concern for Ian. And if you look closely at his coaching record in Norway and in Sweden, in his full seasons as a manager, and please, this is not a criticism, far from it. In his managerial record in Norway and Sweden, he has not yet had one full season in which he has won more games than he has lost, let alone a promotion. At Viking, he won 6 and lost 20, and the club were relegated in bottom position. At Östersunds, he inherited and carried on the good work of Graham Potter. But in the season after Graham Potter left, they were bottom half of the table. Now, please, that is not a criticism of Ian. But as a club, what we are now going to be tasking him with doing is winning more games in a season than he's ever done before. That is not easy at the best of times. And I think he's got a huge amount of work to be done with players that he's inherited in the next 2.5 months. And rightly or wrongly, ultimately, he'll carry the can for where we finish this season if we don't finish in the playoffs among supporters. Leigh?
Yeah, I listen, as I said before, it's a situation that he's been plunged into not through his own making. The owners decided to make the change. So you've got to trust their judgment and believe that they've got it right only in the fullness of time. I think I said in the first video, the first Magpie Circle podcast we did after Neil had left. Nobody really knows. Only in the fullness of time will we see whether he's got it right. I tell you what, this season does remind me of a little bit, though. You remember that season? It's funny enough you talk about Sean Derry. It does remind me a little bit of that season when Sean had taken Notts. We were 4th in the table at one stage. I thought we were odds on to go and get promotion. And then literally just fell away like a stone because players weren't replaced with equal quality. Steve McLaughlin went back. Louis Lang went back, I think. I can't remember else. And we ended up bringing in Kwame Thomas, who was 19 at the time, and Lefe Santos, 19. And they just plummeted because the players they brought in were learning. They weren't ready-made. They were, plunged into a hugely difficult situation. And they just weren't up to the task of carrying on the work that Louis Lang and Steve McLaughlin did. So, it was, and that's my worry is whether, when you're bringing in players like Regan Griffiths, are they ready? Are they first team ready? Are they ready to go straight in and be ready for a promotion push? Because on the evidence I've seen so far, the players that they have brought in, your Kenton Richardsons, your Jordan Barnett's, never been involved in this sort of high pressurized environment. A lot of the other lads like your Doyles, your Rawlinsons, your Alex Laces, your Richard Brinleys have all been there, seen it, done it, so they know what it's about. But it's the Calvin Millers of this world, all that mob that I do have slight doubts about whether they have got the mental fortitude to be a part of when the pressure is really on to go out there and deliver performances, not just on a 1 in 5 basis, but consistently, because that's what we're talking about now. Notts have got to be consistently good till the end of the season if they are going to want to go up. Got to be consistent. It's no good doing it 1 in every 5, 1 in every 3. Got to do it every week. Eli Sam started last night. Again, had taken off after 54 minutes because he's always been told what to do. He's always been told where to stand, what to do, where he should be running. Not ready. Ruben Rodriguez, not ready. You get one game where they like the touch paper, and we're all thinking, wow, that's absolutely brilliant. Then they'll go quiet for another 2 or 3 games. And that's what I'm on about. Recruitment is making sure the players that you're bringing in are going to consistently produce the goods for you. And that's what Notts have got to be, pretty much foot perfect from now until the end of the season. And that, at any stage of the campaign, is hard enough at the best of times, let alone with a squad that's got a few players in there who are still learning their trade. You know, would Stockport have gone out and signed 19-year-old, 18-year-old kids? They haven't, have they? Went out and got Paddy Madden, 31, 3-year contract, because they know that at 31, okay, he's on a big contract, big wage, but he's already scored. He's already off the mark, scored at the weekend, because you know what you're getting. I'm not sure. I can't tell you what Regan Griffiths is going to do. If Paddy Madden had signed for Notts County, I could have said, do you know what? He will score goals, because he's proven it throughout the entirety of his career. He's proven it. Fleetwood, Scunthorpe, you name it. Wherever he's been, he's scored goals. Same with Christian Dennis, Macclesfield, Chesterfield. Here, scored goals wherever he's been, proven. So you know what you're getting. With Regan, I couldn't tell you. So, and it was the same with Jimmy Knowles. You know, he's coming from Mansfield. Yeah, okay. You flip a coin, you're wondering whether they're ready, whether they're going to do it consistently. But this has been the biggest problem. There hasn't been consistency in performances, and that was Neil's last interview. It's exactly what he said. No consistency. Played the same team, don't get the same end result, and that, I think, has probably been Notts' biggest undoing. Just not consistent enough.
One thing I think that is absolutely irrefutable amidst all of the disappointment of the past two games has been the continued support and investment made by Alexander and Christoph Reitz into operating Notts County. And we've seen the intermediaries fees today that have been produced. Notts County, the highest for a second successive season on agents' fees. Money well spent, Martin, or not on these agents?
We don't know who actually the agents have been paid for exactly which signings. Some might be £1,000, some might be 20,000. We don't know. Agents are always a bugbear for me, but I think they're called the necessary evil. I think, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, it is substantial in comparison to the rest of the National League, and more than many in League Two as well. But I guess what it does demonstrate is that the brothers are funding, substantial numbers of acquisitions. They've done another one today, and to continue to do so. And to an extent, and I remember Neil using this Neil Ardley using this in the comment to Leigh at the start of the season. What effectively they're doing, they're taking away excuses or reasons for people to say, oh, we can't get promoted, because they are making players available, funding player acquisitions, and maximising the chance of getting promotion, which is why I get a little bit concerned about the 4-year plan. Hopefully that is merely if you like, downplaying it a little bit so as not to put pressure on Ian in the next 16 games. I think as fans, the reality is that's what we will do in any case. Yeah.
2 summers ago, you look at the people that were there or thereabouts hovering around the club. We've got the best people in the world running the club to what we potentially could have had that summer. In the last 10 to 20 years, have we had a better owner, do you think, long term for the future of the club? As in surviving? I can't think of a better owners that we've had in that time. And I think it was Derek Pavis said that he only has to make one decision, and he has to get it right every time. That's who he picks as his manager. Managers need time, don't they? If Ian needs a bit of luck, he needs Carl Roberts to come back, he needs Lacey to come back, Brindley could come back, Even McCrory, if he could come back, with 3 games to go before the playoffs, and sign a centre forward. If we had Madden come now, you'd be thinking, and Cal Roberts came back, and all those 4 players came back, you'd be thinking, we've got a damn good chance now. A damn good chance. I honestly believe there'll be at least one more sign. I honestly believe there's got to be a centre forward signed. I really do. Because we need to score goals.
Wouldn't disagree with you regards owners, Martin. The reality as fans, we afforded very little respect to Derek Pavis. For those of us a certain age, people call him the plumber. Yeah, and Jack Dunnick, the most successful chairman of modern times in Notts County's history, also took a lot of flack. A lot of flack. Both of those people knew how to run a football club. I wouldn't for one moment disagree with you regards the investment and the commitment made by Alexander and Christoph. However, when we look back in 50 years' time, we will judge their tenure by whether this football club has regained Football League status.
I won't be judging.
Nothing else. Nothing. I promise you, nothing else. It's a results-driven business. Nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. Now, there's different methodologies of how you get results, but the objective and the challenge for Notts County, for the owners, for all of us, is to get back into the Football League. And whichever way you dress it up, you can't have long-term plans in the National League. How many fans do you think we'll have in 2 years' time if we're still in the National League?
Well, I saw it with I saw it with Lincoln. When Lincoln got relegated out the Football League, their gates sank to about 1,600. Remember doing Hyde United at home on a Tuesday night. There was hardly anybody there, and average gates around that season when they were in the Football League were about 3,500, 4,000. Obviously, everything's driven by how successful you are on the pitch, isn't it? I mean, when Lincoln were in the playoffs and when they were challenging under Danny Cowley, it was 9,000 every week. So, but, if you're still stuck down here in 2 years, as I saw Lincoln, the gates, people get bored. And I think Lincoln's situation was a little bit different in the fact that they were struggling financially as well. They didn't have the sort of same level of financial commitment that the owners here are providing at Notts. And I don't think anybody can dispute how good the brothers have been since they've come in terms of, they've rescued the club, they paid the debts, etc. They came in at such a crucial time of the season. They put their hands in their pockets, funded no end of signings. I think where we are at now, though, is a crucial point for them. It's okay having the money and keep producing these signings and having this money ball approach, and you can make as many signings as you want and throw as much money as you want. But if your recruitment isn't right, that money will just be thrown away and absolutely nothing. You'll have nothing to show for it come the end of it, as we've seen previously in history at this football club and many others.
The real irony, Martin, if you look back at both this ownership, the first 18 months, 2 years of Alan's tenureship, the initial years of Ray True, money was not the problem. If you look at Notts County's turnover and church, we've had 35 to 40 players for probably half of the last 10 seasons. Money. I can tell you that in the year Notts were relegated out of League Two, right, the wage bill was over £2 million. One of the 3 or 4 highest in League Two. Ray splashed a lot of cash in the Keith Curl era. That hasn't translated to success. As far as best I can understand this, Notts County have had one promotion in the last 22, 23 years, Martin? One promotion under Munter.
Yeah. Well, it was actually under Ray True in the end, wasn't it? Yeah, that's the only one we've had.
That's the only one we've had. And they are lean years. They are lean years. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And it's kind of translating the investment and delivering tangible results, promotions, results on the pitch that fans are craving for. And of course, if you spend money, people expect promotion and expect success. You know, this is not like a trust era where money was clearly very tight and survival, okay, third bottom, fourth bottom, there's people jumping up and down, think it's a result. Long term, the ambition was steadily stripped out of the club, and that was reflected in very poor attendances. But in answer to Leigh's earlier point, Notts haven't had a dip in attendances yet. You know, 6,000, best part of in the National League in that first season before COVID came. And I think they're going to stick with it this summer as well, come what may. But there will be a tipping point. There will be a tipping point if we aren't getting back in the league very quickly.
Huge difference. Because we're due to get in on, I think, is it the May the 22nd, our last home game?
Yep.
We're due to get fans in. If we can get fans in then, and we're in the playoffs, and we get home legs, it can make a huge difference.
And you've nailed it, Martin. This is my point. We've got to hang in them playoffs.
Yeah.
And you know what? Fan hat on. I think we've failed if we don't. I might be harsh. I think as a club, we have failed if we do not make the playoffs. I agree with you, playoffs. I don't agree with you that it's a lottery, but there is an element of luck involved. You know, Neil Warnock will tell you lotteries are not a playoff, are not a lottery. The Germans for many years will tell you taking penalties in a penalty shootout is not a lottery. Winners, losers. But I accept the point, you don't necessarily control the whole situation. For me, if we're not 7th or higher, this season, I'll be honest with you, is a total failure. Is a total failure, because that is what you're judged on. Not the first 28 games, not the last 19 games, not the calendar year. You're judged season to season. And where we end up is probably where we will deserve to finish. And I think with the investment that the owners have made, the budget that we have, the volume of players that we have, you know, how many times did we hear 2 players per position should be able to cope with injuries? How many times did we hear that? It's the whole point of having 2 players per position. So I think the owners took away any real excuses coaches, management team, and this group of players could have for not making the playoffs. Harsh, that's my view. Leigh?
Well, what would the season be a failure if they didn't? Being as they're in the playoffs now, you'd have to look at it like that, wouldn't you? I mean, that's just being brutally honest. You know, if they fall away from the playoffs after they've been in there for such a long spell of the season, then yeah, what? Because your aim every time you enter a league competition, everybody's ambition, whether you're Sutton United, Torquay, is to get out of the league, isn't it? You don't start a season and think, well, we're just going to finish mid-table this year. So, in a club of the Notts County size and stature, yeah, of course it would be a failure. Everybody was expecting Notts to be challenging this year. The bookies had us and Stockport down as the favourites, didn't they, to win the league this year? So, of course, I think everybody from the outside in, I think what will happen is if it doesn't happen, everybody from the outside looking in will just go, they should never have got rid of the manager. That's instantly what everybody will say. But, of course, we'll never know. So, would it be a failure? Yeah, because I think the fans are desperate to get out of the league this year, and I do think it does represent the best chance to get out. But what I would hope is that if the worst comes to the worst, and they don't do it this year, they have a root and branch review of where it's gone wrong and don't make the same mistakes that have been made this year in terms of, you know, squad issues. Because as those Notts have got the biggest number in terms of players, I would say in terms of quality, it is not the best squad in the league, as everybody kept telling me at the start of the season. Nowhere near it. For me, I think it's unbalanced in certain areas, particularly wide areas. I think there's only really 2 wide players who I would call authentic wide players, which would be Callum and Enzio. if Enzio picks up an injury now, who do you play out wide? Who gives you that little bit of speed? Eli Sam, centre forward, playing on the right hand side or left hand side. So I think whatever happens, they'll have to go back in the summer and really look deep and hard at the recruitment model and look at the mistakes and sort of admit to them, and then go again next year.
Richard Hawksworth, the brothers deserve all our thanks, but how long will they persevere? I fear they are too focused on the long term and not realistic about what is required now. ZO, evening, great respect for owners, but are they perhaps a little naive in their recruitment plan? Agree with using data, but need to also be streetwise. It's a league like no other. Steve Camphor, big decision to sack Neil, and I pray it was the right one come the end of the season. Ian Baggett, how much do we lose in parachute payments if we don't go up? About $500,000. Adam Wright, I bet Ian has been lined up since he came back to the UK. He's the owner's man. Neil would have had until the end of his contract, but Notts' hand was forced due to interest gathering in Ian. Chris Bramley, last week we were 1-25, were we, to reach the playoffs. There is no excuse if we don't reach the playoffs this season. ZO, we have been at a massive disadvantage with no fans. 5,000 shouting you on at home compared to Sutton, maybe 500. Kelstein, most of the teams above us are doing it with much smaller squads. It's all about who we recruited. Final comment, Martin. What do you think?
We need a little bit of luck. Because, to be fair, I don't think we've had a lot this season. When I look at the penalty decision the other night. Like I said, get those 4 players back. Sign a proven goal scorer. Under the Munto finance here, we had 3 proven goal scorers. We did last season. The goal scorers, when they were on the bench, the centre forwards that were playing looked on the bench and thought, I've got to do well today, because if I don't score, there's another one on the bench.
Yeah, great point. Yeah.
If you're Carl Wootton and you sat there, you're thinking, God, I'm going to be playing again this weekend. Because if he has a bad game or a good game, he's still going to play. Because there is nobody on that bench that is threatening his place, and that's what we need. You need your best player's place to be threatened by somebody on the bench. We get a proven goal scorer and get those 4 players back, I think on our day we can beat anybody in this league. But we need another proven goal scorer.
Thank you, Martin. Leigh, final thoughts?
Yeah, I'd echo pretty much what Martin said. I think if they can get Callum Roberts back fit and get him back on the right-hand side and be more like the team we saw last year when it was pretty much 4-4-2. We all knew how they were going to play. There was consistency in selection. And get Enzio back on the left. Get somebody alongside Kyle who can just take the pressure off him a little bit, because at the moment I thought against Yeovil he looked tired. And I thought... And it was my understanding that he would have probably been given a rest against Hornchurch, but of course everything snowballed after that. But he looks tired, and it's very, very difficult for him because he's got this massive burden. I think mentally he must be tired as well. Being tasked with scoring the goals each week because nobody else he's got no support, and he's such a young player as well. We forget he's still learning his trade as well. I'd love for him to have that sort of 28 to 32-year-old striker who's been there, seen it and done it, just to take that little bit of pressure. You look at the teams that have gone up historically, the Reeds and Matt Green. When Mansfield went up, it was Reed and Matt Green.
Didn't they?
Yeah, good partnerships up front. Last year, Barrow, John Rooney, I think, the other side of 30, 18 goals from midfield. Experienced players who know what you need to do to get out of this league. And I think if there is the chance of getting any players in through the door, then I would say try and go out and get some centre forward who can just help Kyle, because at the moment, he deserves a medal, bless him, for playing every week and getting battered and bruised by centre forwards with no help. But yeah, I think they just need to get those players back, I think, and if they can add one or two. And obviously if Regan could come in and hit the ground running and, you know, help solve some of the problems in midfield, then I think they've got a chance, yeah.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for your thoughts, observation and views, and to all our followers this evening. Lots of you again got through loads of observations and questions. Thank you very much indeed. Don't forget Wrexham, Good Friday, early start on BT Sport. I think we're all hoping for a bit of a resurrection at Easter, aren't we? Martin, thank you. Leigh, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you all again very soon.